I'm Shivani Gupta. I'm obsessed with small to medium businesses growing. As business owners, we take so much risk and we want to make sure it's worth it. I believe one of the best presents you can give yourself as a business owner is to be able to learn how to scale your people, your profit, and your processes. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Grow Your Business podcast. Our theme for this particular podcast is the word cult. And you're going, where is she going with this? The idea is that this word cult is in the word culture. It's something that was introduced to me by a lovely colleague of mine, and I have always loved that because when we come across this word cult, which seems like something somebody follows, whether it's an individual or an organization with almost a zealousness where they will follow it at all costs. But really, when we look about that, not in a negative sense of a cult, but we want some of our people to be able to behave in the same way. So I want to talk about some of the benefits of having a cult-like culture in your business as a founder and a leader in terms of helping you grow your business. So when we look at that, as I said, the word cult is sometimes seen as something that is quite controversial. Certainly that's how it's reported in the media. This seems like a cult. And I guess the cult that often comes across is that there's this group thinking mentality. And what I mean by group think is that we've lost that individual mentality around that, and we've actually got something what we call group think. So the group starts to think and feel the same way. And there are many downsides of that sort of cult when we look at it from a negative perspective of having unhealthy dynamics in terms of that there are there, and that sometimes it's one-sided, that the business would get all the benefit or the individual who they're following would get all the benefit. But that's not what I mean by that. What I mean by that is really looking at this word cult and culture as a more positive thing, as a more positive stance and a more positive mindset. So the first thing I want to talk about is how can a cult-like culture create strong employee and our people loyalty? And that loyalty is so important these days. Well, when we have cult-like cultures, the loyalty can actually go up, which will also help us with our retention rates, and then it helps us as a result of that for reduced turnover. And so when people in our business feel like they belong, that they've got a commitment to the business's mission and their values, that part of the cult-like culture is absolutely magical. So what we want to do in terms of a tip for that is that as a leader and a founder and owner of business, if you've got a really, really compelling mission and a vision that people really resonate for, that really speaks to their heartstrings, and it really engages them on a personal level, then one of the things that happens is then there's a positive element of cult-like culture. Also, reinforcing that vision and that mission is so important. Sometimes I know I've spoken to business owners where they go, oh, I'm so sick of talking about it, Shivani. And I go, you can't get sick of talking about it because your people need to hear it over and over and over again. So what you want to be able to do is, whether it's through your regular communication, newsletters, when you're speaking to them, when there's different announcement, but also recognizing employees who embody that in terms of the people that are speaking about your culture and your vision and your mission as well. The second thing that I wanted to talk about is when we've got a cult-like culture, the importance, and from a positive stand, what does that mean for heightened motivation and also engagement? Well, when we've got really, really great motivation and engagement, then that inspires our people to go way beyond and above what they're capable of, and also perhaps what the exact title of their role is. And I've spoken about this in other podcasts when we've spoken about having more passionate people and getting people that are really engaged there. Because when you've got people that have got shared beliefs and they really have a strong sense of purpose, that actually drives the people in our business to be able to excel and to be able to motivate. And one way that we can do that is we can have a lot of transparency in our business. We can have our people that feel really empowered when they're making decisions, also just when they're contributing ideas or when we ask them for some feedback, so we get that level of engagement happening. Now, when we get people that look like that they're so passionate and go above and beyond, then we are starting to create that cult-like culture. And one of the things that we might want to do is also look at how we recognize our people again, and also how do we perhaps just demonstrate and give back to them the fact that we really value their dedication and performance, whether that's verbal feedback, whether there's monetary financial rewards. So just really thinking about how that part works as well. The third thing I wanted to talk around cult and culture is that in a cult-like culture, everybody is aligned across a very, very common vision. And what that happens, which I've spoken about in my first tip, what happens there is that when it comes to execution and when it comes to decision making and implementation of some of those, it becomes so easy to be able to follow and to be able to do. So what happens is, or even when there's a challenge that comes in the business, because there's that unified vision and everybody can see that, people just start acting, knowing that that's the bigger purpose and bigger vision, that they start to get their behaviors aligned into that. And so one of the ways to be able to do that is to make sure that we integrate that part and that unity and that unified vision into all the little elements of it. How do we build that into the little start of each meeting, for example? How do we build that into our hiring process, for example? How do we build that in our onboarding and when we're bringing people on, for example? And another example might be even when we're doing performance evaluations, how can we sort of really look at the people that were really unified in their vision and were able to execute things really, really quickly? The next part of cult-like culture that I want to speak about is having a stronger brand identity. See, because when you've got a cult-like culture, and I'm just going to use a pop icon at the moment, a lot of people go, wow, all the Swifties, as they call them, they follow Taylor Swift. I've got a daughter that's a massive fan. We've been to one of her concerts, which was actually absolutely extraordinary. She's now the highest winning album of the year in the Grammys. She just won her 4th album of the year. That is now basically more than any other artist in history. She's now sold more tickets to any concerts. I think her concert in 2025, 24 and 25 is going to gross over $1 billion. So there's all these things that would call that strong brand identity. But when you look at her as a brand and how she engages, and she's often the first person to be able to acknowledge other female artists, that whether they're performing at the Grammys or elsewhere, it's quite extraordinary. So that brand identity, whether it's an individual or a business, in our case that we're speaking about, it's really about having something that's quite distinct, that stands out. And as a result of that, also becomes really quite memorable. And so we want that brand identity to resonate with the customers that buy from us, with other stakeholders in our businesses that supply to us or are engaged with us. And it can really help us differentiate ourselves and our businesses in the really big marketplace. And it also can create some really, really good loyal customers, like in the case of Swifties or Taylor Swift that I was speaking about. And one of the ways that we can do that is that as a business, you get very, very clear in terms of your brand values, and you put that through all of the marketing that you do, all of your social media that you do, all of your advertising that you do. And you want to ensure that employees are also encouraged and the people in your business are also encouraged to really look at the brand and the interactions that they have with their customers and partners as well. And the last tip that I wanted to speak to you about this cult-like culture is really around being more adaptable. And see, when you come across cult-like cultures, when there's some major changes, because they're very clear on their vision and other things, they're able to have resilience and they're able to have that adaptability to be able to, when changes come or when they are faced with really major issues in front of them, they're able to really look at how they can overcome them. And so sometimes when our people can make sacrifices, knowing how this will work, it comes in really handy. I'll give you an example. I worked with many, many clients over the COVID period where either the business owner had the choice of basically letting a lot of their staff go, or to be able to keep all of them and be able to reduce their salary to 50% or some sort of variation of that. And the number of times that adaptability that came from their people was extraordinary for a lot of business owners. So as founders, when you've got people that are willing to say, yes, I will sacrifice 50% of my salary for the greater good, knowing that hopefully it's just a period in time, knowing that it's not going to be forever, is a really, really great example of adaptability and how that part works. And so just really bringing that into what you do and how you engage in that is you want to constantly look in innovation in your business and how do you stay ahead of the competition. And by doing that, asking some of our people to be a lot more adaptable. So I hope that you got one or two tips in terms of the positive way of looking at cult-like culture, and to have the positive parts of cult in our culture to foster all of those things is an amazing way to grow your business. Thank you for tuning in. Any ideas you have, any thoughts you have, was always welcomed. Please just let me know on askshivani.com. And if you've got some great guests, or if you'd like to be a guest, please also reach out to us on askshivani.com and go to the contact page. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Shivani Gupta, and you've been listening to the Grow Your Business podcast. I hope you got one idea that you can think about or perhaps even implement straight away in your business. Thank you for listening. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn under Ask Shivani. Remember, I call it Ask Shivani, so please send me your questions that I can address in this podcast for you. And I would also so appreciate if you went to the Apple Podcast to rate and review this podcast.